Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, we will see some important concept required for API testing. So let's start it. So first of all, we see introduction to API testing. What is an API? API, application programming interface, is like a messenger that helps two programs or system talk to each other and share information. An API, application programming interface, is a set of rules and protocols that allow one software application to interact with another. It defines how different software components should communicate, making it possible to access the functionality or data of another application or service without needing to know its internal workings. In API, two systems or two servers communicate each other without knowing internal workings. So now we'll see some key points. Interface or communication. In API testing, we repeatedly using the interface or communication words. Interface for communication is nothing but APIs allow software application to communicate and share data. We call it as an interface. And second key points is request and response. Typically, one application sends a request and the API returns a response. So in API testing, request and response are the key points. Now we will see what is the web application and what are the two parts of web application. Normally web application has two parts. One is front end and second is back end. In front end, it's a part of web application where user can see and interact. In front-end testing, we can do web testing, UI, GUI testing. But in backend is a part where without this application cannot work. User cannot see the part. API testing, database testing, we can perform at backend. So normally API testing we perform in backend. So we can't see any part while doing API testing. Internal structures of API testing, we normally send the request and the server gives the response. That what API. Now we'll see types of application. Generally, application has three types: desktop application, web application, and mobile application. Desktop applications like Notepad, no internet required. Means for desktop application, for example, Notepad. Here no internet is required. Download and install and use that. Just you download that, install it and use that. That's the standalone applications. So now we'll see web application. Here internet is required. Web application generally consists of client server architectures. In now mobile application. So in mobile application, software designed for mobiles and tablets only. So these are the different types of applications. Now we'll see client server architecture, which is a most important topic in API testing. So API can be used for web and mobile applications. In client server, client is a device or software like computer, phone or browser that sends requests to get service or data. That's nothing but the client. Client is nothing but we can say the end users, means who sending the request and who wants some response from the servers. That's nothing but the client. Client's device or software like a computer, phone, browser that send requests to get service data. And server is a powerful computer or software that receives those requests, process them and send back requested data or service to client. So client is front end layer or presentation layer, we can say, and server is the back end layer. So now we'll see client server architecture. There are three architectures: 1 tier, 2 tier and 3 tier architectures. So in first tier architecture or 1 tier architecture, client or server in the same system. Means if you are sending the request from client and the server exist in the same systems. So second is the 2 tier application. You can say different clients can access a single database server located on a different machine, which follows a 2 tier architecture. we can call it as an intranet application, or bank employees using the same server for their their personal HR communication or something else. So two tiers means privately you are using a single server with different clients can access a single database. So that's something with two tiers. In three tiers, the modern web application follows three-tier architecture. All bank branch servers are connected to a central server. We can call it as an internet application. All recent application, Facebook, YouTube's, or any Instagrams uses three-tier architecture, where modern web application follows three-tier architectures. Where now suppose all bank branch servers are connected to a central server. So using the internet we can communicate each others. So that's nothing but the three tiers applications or three-tier architecture. Now the difference is two-tier and three-tier is intranet is a private network accessible only within an organization. We seen that bank employs example for intranet or two-tier architecture. And internet is a global network accessible by anyone with an internet connection. We've seen in three-tier architecture with different examples like Facebook, YouTube's, Instagrams. So now we'll see types of layers in web application. In web application, generally three layers: presentation layer, application layer, and data layers. The main purpose of an API is to receive requests from the user, forward them to the database layer, process the data, and send the database response back to the presentation layer, which is displayed on the UI. By using programming languages, developers develop business logic in application layer. Every layer will be having testing like web, API, and database testing. So each application has these three layers. First, database is developed, then API is developed, then 80% of testing at API level. And for API testing we use Postman tool, REST Assure, request module using Python. So while designing an application, first the database is developed, 80% of testing is covered there using API level or testing at API level. Now web is developed and 20% of testings are done on the web. So these are important inter questions as well. So what is developed first? Web is developed or database is developed? So remember, first database is developed, then web is developed. Now we will see different types of APIs. So very first type is open APIs or public APIs. These are open for everyone to use. For example, Google Map API lets any app show maps and directions. So open APIs can use anyone and they are interfaced with any application. So open APIs we use daily basis, or we can say is on public APIs or open APIs. Now the second types of API is the internal APIs or private APIs. Internal APIs or private APIs are used only within a company or organization. They help internal systems or teams communicate securely. For example, HR systems API to access employees' data for payroll processing. So internal APIs are nothing but the private APIs within an organization. The people can use HR system API to access employees' data for payroll processing is the example of internal APIs or private APIs. Now we'll see the partner APIs. These are shared with specific partners or business. They require these special permissions or agreement to use. So partner API generally used for business purpose like WhatsApp business or travel application, Make My Trips application, film ticket book APIs. So different partner APIs. So specific partners or business purpose partner APIs. This one is the types of APIs. Now the last type is the composite APIs, where This API combine multiple APIs into one call, allowing you to get the data from different sources in single request. For example, e-commerce app using a composite API to retrieve product info, pricing and customer reviews all at once. So composite API is a combination of different API in one call. All APIs are called. That's we call it as an composite APIs. Now we'll see API versus web services versus microservice. If you want to do API testing, you need to understand these three concepts very well and differentiate these all three API, web service and microservice. So first upon all, API, what it is, a way for software to communicate with each other. How it works, define rules for one app to request data or service from another. For example, a weather app uses an API to get data from weather service. This is all about the APIs. Now we'll see web service. What it is, a type of API that works over the internet using HTTP. So in API is a software to communicate with each other, but web service is a type of API that works over the internet using HTTP. How it works? Allow two systems to exchange data using XML or JSON. Then, for example, PayPal web service helps e-commerce websites process payments. So this is about the web service. Web service is nothing but type of API that work over the internet using HTTP. But API is nothing but the way of software to communicate each other. Web service is the API that works over the HTTP. Now we see the microservice. What it is, a small independent part of an application that does one job. A large app is built by combining many microservices. That means the combination of independent part of an application that does one job. How it works? Communicate with other microservices via APIs and can run independently. It communicates with other microservices via APIs and can run independently. For example, an online shopping app with separate services for user, login, products, payments and orders. This is an example of microservice. So many services combined together, that's the microservices. So this about the API, API web service and microservice. Now we'll see the in web services. Generally we use the SOAP or REST technique. SOAP is nothing but the simple object access protocol. The XML format data exchange is very old, used by fewer companies. But REST is the representational state transfer, where 90% of companies using JSON, XML and HTML. In REST we can use JSON, XML and HTML. So REST is an advanced testing technique, but SOAP is an old technique, very few companies are using it. This about the web services. Now we'll see different HTTP methods. So very first HTTP method is GET. GET is a method where we can retrieve data from the server. In GET method just send the request, it will provide you the retrieve data. POST, send data to the server and create new resources. By using POST method, we can send the data to the server and create the new resources. In PUT HTTP methods, we can send data to the server to update or replace an existing resource. In PUT, we can send the data to server and update or replace existing resource. Now we'll see the patch. Patch is nothing but the partially update an existing resource on the server. So PUT, by using the PUT, we can update or replace, but in patch we update partially. That's the difference between PUT and patch. Now we'll see the delete methods. Here, remove resource from the server. So these are some HTTP methods. Recently we using or generally we use this GET, POST, PUT, patch and delete. Now we'll see some different concept like feature and resource. Feature normally we use in manual testing. Resource we use in API testing. represents same functionality. In manual testing, all weekend features, in API testing we can call as a resource. So both are same functionality. Now we'll see HTTP versus HTTPS. Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. HTTPS is an extension of Hypertext Transfer Protocol HTTP. It is used for secure communication over computer network. Data will be transferred in encrypted format. This is the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. HTTPS is nothing but the secured communication over a computer network. Data will be transferred in encrypted format. But HTTP is non-secure. Data will be not transferred in encrypted format. Now we'll see some important concept: URI, URL, and URN. Suppose, for example, https //google.com/article/article name. This one link. Now URI nothing but uniform resource identifier. So https //google.com article/article name. This complete we can call as uniform resource identifier. Now we see the URL. URL is nothing but uniform resource locator. So https //google.com/article/article name. This complete link we can say URL. Now URN nothing but uniform resource name. For example, article name. So only that part is an URN, uniform resource name. Article name is the URN. Now https //. These are nothing but the schema we can say. Host is the google.com and path is the article/article name. So these are the different concept like URI, URL, and URN. So in API testing, very important concept is the request payload and response payload. In request payload, we sending data along with the request. Request might be in JSON format, and in response payload, data coming along with the response, it is also in JSON format. So all this about the API testing, introduction to API testing. In API testing, the important concept is client server. In web application, how the client server architecture works, first tier, 2 tier, 3 tier architectures. Client server is a concept. If you understand it, the API testing is a very easy concept for you. Just remember first tier, 2 tier, and 3 tier architectures. Here you are not able to see any part from backend. So you just sending the request in JSON format and you get the response. And you are validating different points like status code, JSON structures, and all things. So web now client server is why important, because in 2 tier and 3 tier architecture, your client should be same, but your server is different. This where is in second tier architecture and 3 tier architecture. 3 tier architecture, your server located at different positions. In 2 tier architecture, your server is in different positions, but its functionality is quite similar. At the end of the day, you sending some request and server give you the response. That's it. That's only API testing. So you should focus on client server architecture, or we can say client server functionality is a very important. Client is a device or software like computer, phone, or browser that sends request to get service or data. You should remember, you should keep this in mind. Every interview questions you get that question: what is the client and server? And server is a powerful computer or software that receives those requests, processes them, and sends back to the requested data or service to the client. That's it. So in today's video, we'll see we have seen what is an API, some key points like interface for communication, request response, then web application, 2 parts of web application, front-end, backend, then different types of application, there desktop application, web application, mobile applications. So API we can test web and mobile application using APIs. Now client server architecture, then different architecture types, 1 tier, 2 tier, 3 tiers architectures, then different layers, where presentation, application and data layers, then types of APIs, where open APIs or public APIs, internal APIs or private APIs, partner APIs, composites APIs. Then we have seen API versus web services versus microservices. Then we see some HTTP methods like get, post, put, patch, delete. We see the features and resource. What is the feature and resource? Then we have seen the HTTP versus HTTPS. And at last we see URI, URL, URN.